already know that today I'm going to be reviewing the new Natasha Denona Xenon palette. Now, I did do a shopper drop on this, and I shared with you that this simply is not a color story that I was very excited about, because if I'm being honest, it really is a 50 Shades of Grey palette. But let's take a closer look. Let's see if this palette can prove me wrong. Here is the box that it's going to come in. It has these little stars on the packaging, 24 months shelf life. Made in Italy as per usual. It also on the back here has all of the ingredients and the formulas and the names of the colors. Now, I ordered this from Natasha Denona's website and I got it lickety split. It came yesterday afternoon, so I'm happy to be sitting down and playing with it today. I highly recommend ordering from the Natasha Denona website because not only is shipping fast, but it also is very well protected. I want to knock on wood, but I've never had a package or an eyeshadow break when I've ordered from the Natasha Denona website, but you can also get it at Ulta if you want to get the points, maybe hold off potentially this Sephora sale, especially if you're Rouge. Or you can get 15% off right now on the Natasha Denona website if you use my code morganturner15. But first, let's get into the review before you guys decide if this is for you or not. So here is what the actual packaging looks like. I love this star kind of look. I do wish these were like sparkly. It's actually like a flat matte white, but I definitely see the stars here on this. And then it is a midi style palette, so you do have these holes on the back, full-size mirror. The palette stands up on its own, which I love, whatever angle that you want. And then of course you do have the shades right here over a black background. It is $69, and according to the website it is limited edition. We will see about that. This is my favorite size of Natasha Denona eyeshadows because it's a good middle ground of price point, because Natasha Denona palettes can be a lot more expensive, but you still get a lot of different colors. They just happen to have less formula in there, but I don't even mind as somebody who has such a large eyeshadow palette collection. Now, if you didn't know, the Xenon palette right here is a expansion upon the mini Xenon that launched last year. Now, my thing with this, my main worry was I didn't feel like this color story needed an expansion. I felt like if they expanded that the shades would be quite redundant, and as I'm looking, you guys, I mean, like, yes, kind of redundant. I feel like I could get the same look with this palette that I could get in this palette, and not much more variety beyond that. I mean, the silvers look so similar. This palette does have a matte black that the new palette doesn't have. But anyways, we're going to play with the palette first. I have to say, looking in person, comparing it to what I see online, I feel like this palette looks a lot more gray. And I mean, the photos online aren't bad, but the grays are standing out to me a lot more. And I was worried that this palette would literally be 50 Shades of Grey. I think it kind of is. But let's go ahead and get to swatching on this. Okay, so I have Rhyme right here. Singus, which, oh my gosh, this looks like such a cool sparkly black shade. Stellar. Okay, and then Blizzard, my nail is going to cause me to struggle to get that on my finger. But here are the swatches. How beautiful does this middle shade look? Okay, so this is a metallic white right here. Then this shade right here, Singus, is a sparkling foiled anthracite is what she uses online, but it's like a really dark gray with a lot of silver reflect. Then we have Stellar, which is that sparkling wet formula. And they call it a sparkling wet effect white. So it doesn't have much base pigment to it. Honestly, it just looks like a silver topper to me. And then the last shade on my finger is a matte light gray. Continuing on with the next four shades, I was really curious about Ebb. It looked a lot more blue online. I could still see the bluish tone to it, but it definitely isn't as blue looking, I feel like, in person. But here's what we're dealing with on my finger pads. Actually, right now, I feel like I can see the blue now. So we have a sparkling metallic iron gray. Here's Ebb, that metallic midnight blue. Not super blue, really. Then we have a sparkling foiled silver with multicolored specks. That looks really pretty. This also looks like the silver that's in the mini Xenon. And then we have a matte cream powder charcoal. So this is a cream to powder formulation, so it's not going to have any fallout. It's going to be really easy to use for beginners. I will say, looking at Sposh here, it is a dark color, but it looks almost black. I feel like it looks a little lighter on the swatch. I'm excited about this shade because this is kind of a pinky tone to it. I feel like in this lighting though, it looks more silver than it does pink. But let's get these last four. That's what they look like. See, this doesn't look very pink at all. So this is supposed to be a crystal sparkling pink with multicolored specks. Okay, it looks a little bit more pink with swatch. A metallic black right here. It's not super glittery or reflective, but it definitely has a slight metallic finish. Not as shiny as some of her other metallics. Then we have a matte white. Really important to have, I think, with this kind of color scale. And then finally we have a matte medium gray. That one swatched horribly. And then we're going to finish off with these last three colors here. Very pretty. So interesting that they describe this as a sparkling metallic peony pink. Still looks very silver and cool tone. We have a matte eggshell and then a sparkling foiled light medium champagne, which didn't swatch amazing. I will say this palette lacks in her super creamy foiled metallic eyeshadows that you can swatch the whole way down your arm. There are a couple on here for sure, but I will say, especially with the shimmers, the formulas do feel a little drier, which I think is going to be great because it actually is going to help reduce fallout. With these kinds of shades, fallout can kind of be detrimental to a look. So while a couple of the shimmers are a little bit, dare I say, lackluster than what I'm used to, like for example this shade from Natasha Denona, I'm actually not mad based on the color story here, but we'll see with application. But here is how it's looking. I feel like a lot of the colors pulled true to pan here. But yeah, this is a grayscale palette, I do feel like. Not much pops outside of the gray family. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how the looks today are gonna turn out. I just want to see if they look the same to one another while using different colors. So I'm gonna first start off with Contrail, which is the white shade. I'm very excited about this shade. I love a good matte white, and I'm gonna use this to set under my brow bone because I actually cleaned up with the concealer that was a wee bit on the dark side. So we're just gonna use this to brighten up underneath the brow bone, and I feel like it does have a gray undertone to it, or maybe I've just been staring at gray eyeshadows for too long. So that's the perfect brow bone highlight. Now let's see, we're gonna go into this bone shade is what they call it, Flurry. I'm gonna put it underneath Contrail. I mean, was it really necessary to have both of these? I feel like it wasn't. This one definitely has more of a grayish tone to it, but probably not necessary to have both of those. But I digress. Now let's start with Blizzard here, which this would be a very pretty all over eyelid color for a matte look. And this one also kind of the same color as the first two, just a little bit different of a gray. I can see a slight tone difference, but I think my problem is I went in kind of feeling like these were going to be redundant shades, so I'm biased in that everything is backing that up. But you see with your eyes, right? There's 3 shades on my eyelid. Can you tell? Okay, and I'm doing this on purpose. I'm purposefully using these colors next to each other to prove my point. So we're going to go into Snert next, which I think is going to be the first difference in this eye look. Yeah, okay, there we go, and working out really nice. Now these mattes, they do have a little bit of kickback, but nothing crazy, just in typical Natasha Denona fashion. We're gonna blend this. Very easy to use. I'm very happy with the shade. Just gonna blend that, and I'm keeping it just above the crease. Now let's use Sposh right here, which is the cream to powder is what this formula is. And I'm going to put this a little bit lower in the crease. This palette would be amazing for a halo eye. So I'm just going to go back and forth. And as you can see, this is great because you're getting no fallout and it still has good pigment. I did go heavy-handed in the pan, but this formula over the years has definitely grown on me. I've learned to appreciate it more, and it did a great job in this aspect right here. And I'm going to take the brush that I used for the shade Snert, and we're just going to have everything nice and blended. Okay, we're gonna start digging into some real color here. So I want to see Singus, which I want all over my eyelid, but I'm not gonna do that. But it is the sparkling black, which I think would be an incredible eyeliner color. Oh my gosh, this almost dropped off the table. I would have been so mad at myself, but I'm just gonna press this using my Rephr Mini and Max collection, by the way, brushes right now. Look how pretty that is, and you can see how reflective the sparkles are in here. Ooh, I love this shade. It's actually a bit putty-like in pan, I feel like. I'm making sure to tap off the excess, but this shade all over the eyelid, mark my words, will be incredible. You know, I know there's a matte black already in the mini Xenon, and I don't like repetition, but I actually would not have been mad if they had put a matte black in this palette because it's just so necessary for these shades. Okay, I'm wiping off my brush. This brush is great for small/hooded eyelids. It's the number 2 mini from Rephr. So I just used this shade. I want to see if Ebb's going to stand out next to it, which is the bluish shade. Okay, tell me, is that reading blue to you? Because it really isn't to me on my eyelid. It's kind of blending right in with my grease color. Good quality, don't get me wrong. Now let's use Super Ionic, which is a silver shade, and I want this to completely, yes, this is doing exactly what I wanted it to do for this eye and opening it right up. Since we have such dark shades on the eyelid, I'm going to layer it over Ebb a little bit. I mean, it is a really pretty look. I feel like Ebb and Night Sky right here also would read really similar. So I'm going into my favorite shade, Singus. I love this shade. It's so fun and unique. Just kind of redefining out here. And then we're going to finish off with Rhyme right here. And this is just a shimmery metallic white. Perfect for this look. For the inner corner and brow bone. Okay, let me clean up under here, which honestly, for all things considered, I have almost no fallout, which is really great for a palette this deep. For lower lash line work, I'm going to go into Night Sky right here, and we're just gonna see. I don't know what I'm seeing, but we're just gonna see. It's a nice shape. It's just a really dark gray, and I feel like the tone is a little different than what we have going on the upper eyelid. And then I haven't yet used this shade right here. It's not going to be the brightest. It's more of just like a true metallic shade. No crazy reflex in here. Okay. Cool. I think that's gonna do it for this eye. It's exactly how I expected a look from this palette to turn out. Could I create a similar look with this palette? I'm gonna say yeah, but this palette only has one shimmer, so it would be similar, but it's a little different. Okay, let me put on some of my Urban Decay eyeshadow primer potion. So I got out of my system a lot of the shades that I wanted to mess around with for that first look. So let's go. I really want to play with Stellar, like really, really bad. So I'm going to start off with Flurry in the crease. There's a lot of shimmers in here. As much as I want to do a halo eye, my eyelid is just too small to test a lot of these shades. I'm gonna take some of Night Sky. Let me get a smaller brush, which is this metallic shade right here, but it's not glittery, so it can be used in the crease. So I'm just gonna start off by circling this here. It's working as a pretty good blackish shade. I know it is more charcoal, but it's adding a good amount of depth, and even though it is metallic, you know, the no glitter in here is actually really great for using this for depth. And all things considered, it's blending pretty good and it's not messy. Now Stellar here is that sparkling wet foiled formula, and I just need to put it all over the eyelid using a finger, going above the inner part of my crease as well. What do you think? Does it look sparkling and wet? I think the glimmers are really refined here. It's not glittery really, it's more so glimmery is how I would describe it. I don't know that this is a groundbreaking formula by any means, but it's very, very pretty. I do want to see Neve next to it right here, which is a little bit more white. Almost no difference between these two. I think the shimmers in the Neve might be the slightest bit chunkier, and I mean very minimal difference. And they feel different. This one is more powdery, this one has that slick feel to it, but they definitely look the same. I'm gonna put the pink shade at the bottom to see if there's any difference between the two as well. But before we do that, I have to try Singus, or if I'm pronouncing this wrong, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to use this shade on a wet brush. So I do need to wet it because otherwise this is going to get all over my face. It's that glittery black. I need to use that as an eyeliner. I'm going to use Cali Ray Surf Proof Setting Spray. Okay, let's see. It's got a putty feel in pan, so I'm making the biggest mess. It's a little difficult to get a smooth line with the texture of it being a little messy and flaky, but we're just going to be patient and press. Okay, it looks really cool, right? As an eyeliner, I thought that it would, and it definitely does. I did get a little bit more fallout on this side, so let me quickly clean that up. Okay, so for the last part of this eye, I'm not going to do anything crazy or new. So I'm going to use some of Night Sky again. And I want to apply this to the lower lash line. I'm going to do like the outer half here, not too deep, because I do want to mess around with this Snowbow shade. The only shade today that I didn't get to use that I wanted to is Skift right here, so I'll have to keep you updated on that. But I want to see if this is pinky. What do you think? I feel like it is so slight. Like comparing it from the top to the bottom, the undertone is different, but it still doesn't scream pink. But it is. I'm gonna take some of Rhyme right here. We're just gonna use that white right here. And I think that's it for the looks. I mean, the two look different from one another, so that's good. I envision myself doing some sick halo eyes with this palette, but let me get some liner and lashes on really quick, and then we'll do some comparisons. So just so you could see, here are the looks with some liner and lashes. I mean, really fun, cool toned, gray, smoky eyes. I did want to compare, so I've always talked about, like, don't buy mini Xenon, buy the ColourPop Blow and Smoke for $14 for 3 additional colors. This palette had literal dupes of the mini Xenon, but I was curious, how did this compare to our big Xenon? Obviously, there's less colors, but take a look at them side by side, right? Right. Now there are a few differences. So the top is Natasha Denona Xenon. The bottom is ColourPop. You'll see this one right here. I didn't have a single dupe for in the Natasha Denona. But like, right? Now ColourPop obviously doesn't nail down the textures, and I couldn't swatch any of like the sparkling foiled metallics or the sparkling wet effects. ColourPop just doesn't have those textures that makes Natasha Denona's formula stand out and justifies the price point a lot more. But again, you can get the look with this palette, okay? You can. And then of course, I wanted to show you how similar the colors in the mini Xenon were to the Xenon palette. So the top is Xenon, bottom is mini Xenon. I mean, guys, that's all I can say. Okay, so here's kind of my final 2 cents about this palette. If you felt like prior to it being launched that you didn't need this palette, nothing about this has changed my mind to try and convince you otherwise. Formulation-wise, I think the colors are very nice, as Natasha Denona has been doing. She has some really special shades that sets her formula apart from the market. But if you're not wearing these shades all of the time, you don't need this many shades of gray. This palette absolutely does have redundant shades that are very close to one another. If you have the mini Xenon and you were happy with the mini Xenon, if you have ColourPop Blow and Smoke and you were happy with ColourPop Blow and Smoke, you don't need the Xenon palette. I'm just gonna say that. But there was a good amount of you who were saying, you know, you're very, very fair, or you're very, very, very cool toned, and you can just see yourself loving this palette. These colors were exactly what you're looking for. I definitely think that you are going to enjoy the quality of this palette. I cannot overlook the fact that some shades are just close to one another, but if that doesn't bother you and this color story is for you, there are not a ton of palettes out on the market that have such a large gray scale to it. So, you know, there definitely is a targeted person for this palette. I don't foresee this being a palette that I'm going to use a ton. It's definitely not going to reach my top 5 Natasha Denona palettes, but that's what is awesome about Natasha Denona, is she's not afraid to go there. She's not afraid to create unique color stories that are different from what she already has done in the past. So kudos to her for that. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with this palette. I'm going to continue testing it to see what other looks I can create, because I need to do a halo eye with this palette. I most definitely do. So, and it's also great for this time of year. She launched this right before Halloween, right before cool toned winter here, so it did come at the perfect time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review and found it helpful. If you've received this palette, let me know your thoughts. Even if you didn't, let me know your thoughts. Has my review changed anything for you? Let's get chatting in the comments. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye guys, have a good one.